Chosen one, listen closely. There is a reason your life never felt normal, even when you tried to make it normal. From the beginning, something about your path felt different, heavier, quieter, more demanding. You watched others move forward with ease while you felt delayed, paused, even hidden. And for a long time, you thought something was wrong with you. You questioned yourself. You asked God why obedience didn't seem to produce the same results it did for everyone else. But what if I told you that what you interpreted as delay was actually designation? There are things in the kingdom that cannot be accessed by talent. They cannot be unlocked by intelligence, charisma, or even long hours of prayer. There are doors that do not open because you are gifted or hardworking. They open only when you are trusted, and trust in the kingdom is not emotional. It is governmental. You were not being evaluated for how loud you could worship or how visible your faith looked. You were being examined in the quiet, in the unseen, in the moments when no one was watching and no reward was promised. This is why your life could not follow the normal timeline. This is why shortcuts never worked for you. Every time you tried to force something early, it collapsed. Every time you tried to blend in, something inside you resisted. Heaven would not allow you to rise too fast because speed without clearance is dangerous. God does not promote people who have not been processed. And you, chosen one, were being processed at a depth most people never reach. You felt isolated not because you were rejected, but because you were being separated. There were seasons when your phone was silent, when invitations stopped coming, when people misunderstood your heart and misjudged your intentions. You were faithful and still felt overlooked. You did the right thing and still watched doors close. But those closed doors were not punishment. They were security measures. God was restricting your access to protect what He was preparing to place within you. You see, before heaven allows someone to carry certain authority, there are background checks that must be completed. Not on your resume, but on your soul. Every wound you endured, every betrayal you survived, every delay that tested your patience was part of that verification process. Heaven was watching how you handled disappointment, how you responded when prayers went unanswered, how you treated people who hurt you when you had every reason to walk away bitter. This was not random suffering, this was evaluation. This is why your life couldn't look like anyone else's. God could not afford to make you comfortable too early. Comfort creates carelessness, and what is coming into your life requires precision. So while others were being celebrated, you were being refined. While others were being promoted publicly, you were being shaped privately. You were hidden because visibility without clearance can destroy a person. God hid you not because you lacked value, but because you carried too much. You probably wondered why you always felt out of place. Why conversations that excited others drained you? Why environments that entertained people left you empty? Why you could never fully belong no matter how hard you tried? That was not pride. That was alignment. You were never meant to fit into systems that were beneath the level you were being prepared for. Heaven was protecting you from attachments that would limit your future access. Even your confusion had purpose. You thought you were lost, but you were actually being guided through layers of preparation you could not yet understand. When God goes silent, it is often because He is watching. Silence does not mean absence. It means observation. He was studying your reactions. Would you remain faithful without explanation? Would you obey without clarity? Would you stay loyal when nothing made sense? Those answers mattered more than your questions. This is why certain prayers were not answered the way you expected. You asked for open doors and God gave you endurance. You asked for clarity and God gave you character. You asked for promotion and God gave you isolation. Not because He was cruel, but because He was careful. He was training you to carry weight without breaking, to hold authority without becoming arrogant, to walk in power without losing humility. You didn't survive everything you faced just to live an ordinary life. Ordinary paths do not require this level of testing. Ordinary assignments do not demand this much stripping, this much waiting, this much inner work. You were being prepared for access that cannot be rushed, access that cannot be explained to everyone, access that most people would misuse if they received it too early. And this is why you felt watched even when no one was around, why your conscience was sharper than others, why you couldn't get away with things people around you did casually. Heaven was already treating you differently because you were already being measured by a different standard. You were not being judged. You were being trusted. What feels like confusion right now is actually confirmation. The very fact that you are still here, still believing, still searching, still sensitive to God's presence after everything you've been through is proof that something deeper has been happening behind the scenes. You were not forgotten, you were being verified, and now something is shifting. The hidden season is reaching its end. The clearance that was being processed quietly is beginning to activate. There are signs that prove this clearance is real, signs that reveal you are operating at a level most people never qualify for. And once you see them, everything about your life will finally make sense. Chosen one, this is where things become undeniable. There are signs in your life that cannot be explained by personality, upbringing, or coincidence. You feel more than others feel. You notice what others overlook. You carry an emotional and spiritual weight that follows you into every room, even when you say nothing. This is not because you are overly sensitive. It is because your spirit has been trained to register what is happening beneath the surface. You walk into environments and immediately sense when something is off. No one has to say a word. The atmosphere speaks to you before people do. You can feel tension, deception, sorrow, or danger without explanation. Sometimes it comes as heaviness, sometimes as uneasiness, sometimes as a sudden urgency to pray. And there have been moments when you tried to ignore it, only to later realize you were right all along. That is not intuition. That is discernment activated by clearance. You wake up at odd hours of the night, not because of anxiety, but because something in the spirit realm has shifted. 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. Your sleep breaks without warning, and your heart feels alert before your mind does. You may not even know what to pray about, but you feel compelled to intercede. That is not random. That is heaven tapping you on the shoulder because you are on duty. Clearance doesn't sleep the way others do. You also know things you never studied. Truths surface in your spirit without research. A scripture will suddenly illuminate your situation with surgical precision. You will understand people's motives without asking questions. You will sense outcomes before they unfold. This is not pride. It is not imagination. It is information released on a need-to-know basis. Heaven does not download intelligence to those who will misuse it. You were given insight because you proved you could carry it responsibly. And here is one of the clearest signs. You cannot live casually. You tried. You watched others compromise and move on without consequence. You attempted to blend in, to relax your standards, to say it is not that deep. But every time you did, your spirit reacted. Conviction followed you. Peace left you, joy diminished. That is because your clearance level does not permit mixture. What others get away with becomes a burden on you. Not because God is unfair, but because He is protecting what He has entrusted to you. This is also why your circle became smaller. People didn't necessarily betray you. Conversations no longer flowed. Relationships that once felt natural became strained. God began removing access quietly, not in dramatic endings, but in silent separations. This was not punishment, it was encryption. When you carry sensitive information, access must be restricted. Heaven could not afford a data leak through the wrong people. Your isolation was protection, not rejection. You have learned something painful through this process. You cannot say everything you know. You cannot warn everyone you want to warn. You cannot expose every truth you perceive. Early on you tried. You spoke too soon. You shared too much, and it backfired. God corrected you, not because you were wrong, but because you were being trained. Clearance requires restraint. Maturity is not knowing more. It is knowing when to stay silent. And you have learned how to hold information without needing validation. As your discernment increased, so did your warfare. The attacks became less obvious and more strategic. The enemy stopped coming openly and started coming subtly. Through thoughts, through emotions, through relationships, through fatigue. You felt pressure in your mind, weight in your heart, resistance in areas that once flowed easily. And you wondered if something was wrong with you. But nothing was wrong. Your clearance level increased, and so did the opposition. Hell does not escalate unless heaven has already authorized promotion. The intensity of your battles is evidence of the authority you are growing into. You were not attacked because you were weak. You were attacked because you were becoming dangerous. And yet, despite the pressure, you did not quit. You did not compromise. You adapted. You grew sharper. You became more disciplined in prayer, more careful with your words, more selective with your energy. That is how clearance matures. You may have noticed something else. Your presence affects rooms even when you are silent. Arguments quiet down. Chaos settles. People suddenly become uncomfortable or calm without knowing why. You don't force it, you don't announce it. It just happens. That is authority without noise. That is divine weight. When you enter a space, heaven registers you, and the atmosphere adjusts accordingly. This is because angels are assigned to you by rank, not just by protection. Everyone has angels assigned to guard them, but not everyone carries clearance that requires enforcement. You are not just protected, you are backed. Your obedience activates assistance. Your worship strengthens alignment. When you pray, movement happens because you are not speaking into the air. You are issuing authorized requests. And all of this was tested in private. God watched how you obeyed when no one applauded. When doing the right thing cost you relationships. When integrity cost you opportunities. When silence cost you being misunderstood. Those moments were not small, they were clearance exams. And you passed more of them than you realize. If this resonates, it is because your clearance is active. You feel more because you are trusted with more. You carry weight because you are authorized to handle it. But understand this clearly. Clearance is not just access. It is responsibility. And what comes next will require even greater precision. Because with clearance comes responsibility and a new assignment. Chosen one, hear this clearly. You are not just a believer. You are not just someone who attends, listens, or observes. You are an operator in the kingdom. That is why your life has felt heavier than most. That is why you were trained through pressure instead of comfort. Heaven does not put operators on display early. They are prepared in silence and deployed with precision. And now, the season of preparation is giving way to activation. You are being assigned to function, not just to feel. Intercession is no longer optional for you. When you feel that sudden burden to pray, it is not emotion, it is dispatch. Heaven is routing information through your spirit because you have been cleared to respond. You are being sent ahead of events before they happen. You intercept things in the unseen so they never fully manifest in the natural. You are not reacting to chaos. You are preventing it. That is the authority you carry. You are also called to govern atmospheres. Wherever you go, your presence establishes order. Confusion lifts, peace settles, alignment begins. You don't need a platform for this. You don't need permission from people. Your authority is positional, not popular. When you pray in a space, it shifts. When you speak truth, things realign. That is not coincidence. You are carrying governmental authority in your spirit, and creation responds to rank. You are a gatekeeper. God positions you near families, workplaces, communities, and systems not by accident, but by assignment. Your discernment sounds the alarm before danger becomes visible. You sense infiltration early. You feel when something dark is attempting to enter. And because of your clearance, heaven gives you authority to stand in the gap. You guard what God is building. You protect what others don't even realize is under threat. This is why your obedience has become immediate. When God says move, you move. When He says wait, you wait. When He says speak, you speak. And when He says be silent, you hold your tongue. You no longer wrestle with instructions. You understand that delayed obedience compromises outcomes. You don't need the full blueprint anymore. You trust the commander. That is the mindset of someone who has been cleared. The wilderness season is ending. The silence is breaking. The isolation is lifting. Not because the work is over, but because the deployment has begun. What was processed privately is now being revealed spiritually. The clearance was granted long ago. What is happening now is revelation. Heaven is making you aware of what has already been authorized. Understand this. Hell recognizes your threat level. That is why the attacks intensified right before this shift. That is why distractions increased. That is why fatigue tried to take you out. The enemy does not waste resources on people without influence. If you were targeted heavily, it is because your assignment carries weight. And yet, you are still standing. That alone confirms your clearance. Heaven also recognizes your rank. Angels respond to your obedience. They move with your prayers. They enforce what you declare when your words align with heaven's will. You are not commanding in arrogance. You are commanding in alignment. Authority flows naturally when obedience is complete. You don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to prove anything. The realm of the Spirit already knows who you are. Now is not the time to shrink. Now is not the time to apologize for your discernment or dilute your convictions. You were not refined to blend in. You were refined to stand firm. The access you carry is sacred. The authority you walk in is sealed. You have been cleared to operate at a level that requires courage, restraint, and precision. There are people whose breakthroughs are tied to your obedience. There are environments waiting for your presence to shift them. There are moments when heaven will interrupt your schedule because you are needed in the spirit realm. Do not resist it. You were trained for this. You were prepared for this. You were trusted with this. Say it now, even if only in your spirit. I am cleared. The clearance is active. My assignment is unfolding. When you declare it, you are not claiming something new. You are aligning with what heaven has already established. Your declaration brings agreement between earth and heaven. Chosen one, this chapter is sealed. The waiting season is behind you. The clearance process is complete. You are authorized, activated, and deployed. Walk with confidence, not in yourself, but in the one who cleared you. Speak with authority. Move with precision. Carry the weight with humility. You are not just called, you are cleared. And the assignment ahead of you will confirm everything you endured to get here.